On that sweltering summer afternoon, everything seemed to follow the predictable script as always. Hurried cars, busy glances, and no one really noticed each other on the sidewalks. But there, right at the door of a modern skyscraper, a slow-paced man stopped, adjusted the worn strap of his bag on his shoulder, and took a deep breath. He wasn't asking for alms, wasn't selling anything, nor did he seem lost. He just looked at the intercom and, with some hesitation, pressed it. On the other side of the door, surrounded by luxurious furniture and silence, was a woman accustomed to denying everything that seemed useless to her. Helena Vasconcelos, a renowned scientist, no longer even opened the door personally. But at that moment, by a whim of fate or weariness from loneliness, she answered and was surprised by a simple request, almost absurd for someone who lives in abundance. "Could you give me a small cutting?" He didn't ask for help, nor food. He didn't cry, didn't explain, he just wanted the cutting. And in that instant, something inside her cracked. Not because of the plant, but because of everything he didn't say. Because there was something in that firm, tired but dignified look that threw her off balance. It was as if the world stopped for a few seconds, and she saw everything differently. She didn't know his name. And yet, that man was about to be the turning point of her entire life. More than a plant cutting, he would give her something that no money had been able to buy until then. A reunion with her own humanity. This story is not about charity, nor about heroism. It's about small encounters that change destinies. And if you think you know where it's going, prepare yourself, because not even the scientist imagined that this simple gesture would open the door to the greatest transformation of her life. Stories like this don't happen every day, and perhaps that's exactly why it deserves to be told calmly, like someone sitting on the porch to hear the echoes of life. Because sometimes a small gesture, almost mundane in the world's eyes, hides a force capable of transforming not only the moment, but the heart of someone who had already forgotten how to feel. What you're about to hear now is not just about a rich woman and a simple man. It's about what makes us human: need, silence, dignity, and reunion. It's about when luxury meets the essential and someone powerful's routine is broken by a priceless request. Prepare to walk through a story that will warm your soul. If you value stories that truly touch, that bring lessons without shouting, that move without forcing, then this channel is your place. Here, each story is an invitation to empathy. And if any part of this story moves you, even just a little, don't hesitate to show it. Your support keeps these stories alive. So go ahead and leave your like now before you forget. Subscribe to the channel to always receive stories like this that remind us to stop, breathe, and see others. And comment down below, from which city and country are you watching? It's beautiful to see people from all over the world connecting through such universal emotions. Now settle in, take a deep breath, and come with me to meet Helena Vasconcelos and the man who asked for just a plant cutting, but took a piece of her soul with him. What comes next is not empty fiction. It's a living reminder that in the end, we are all thirsty travelers, waiting only for a little humanity. Helena Vasconcelos lived in a penthouse surrounded by tall windows and vertically pruned gardens. To the eyes of those passing by on the street, everything there was synonymous with success. The imposing facade, the imported car in the garage, the wide windows with white curtains that moved gently in the wind. But what no one saw was the heavy silence that dwelled inside, a silence that neither ambient music nor expensive wines could fill. At 58, Helena was the portrait of a successful scientist. Owner of a network of research centers, she accumulated awards, honors, and magazine interviews. But it had been a long time since she had truly smiled. Laughter had become an automatic gesture in meetings, and joy, a distant concept. She lived surrounded by assistants, but was alone even on birthdays. It had been a long time since anyone asked her a simple question: how are you, really? On that sweltering Tuesday, Helena had decided not to leave the house. She sat in her leather armchair with a cup of almost cold coffee, looking out the window at the street movement. It was rare to observe the outside, but that day she felt something different, an uneasiness she couldn't name, as if the world was about to tell her something, and she, for the first time, was willing to listen. That's when she saw the man. He came slowly with short but firm steps. He wore a simple shirt, faded pants, and carried a bag that seemed as old as his wrinkles. He wasn't a beggar, but he also wasn't someone who would go unnoticed. He looked at the building's gate, like someone hesitating between continuing to walk or stopping. And then he stopped. Helena leaned forward, curious. This already broke her routine. No one rang that intercom without being expected, especially someone like him, who brought no business card, no delivery uniform. For a moment she considered ignoring it, but something in that tired look, a mix of exhaustion and courage, disarmed her. Against all habits, she got up and went to the door. When she opened it, she found herself face to face with the man. He didn't smile, didn't cry. He just spoke in a gentle voice. "Good afternoon, miss. Would you have a marjoram cutting to offer me?" He didn't ask for alms. He didn't explain anything. Just that, the plant cutting. Helena remained silent for a few seconds, surprised by the simplicity of it, and perhaps also because she couldn't remember the last time someone had asked her for something so essential. "Of course," she replied, swallowing her strangeness. She asked him to wait and went to the balcony. She carefully cut a sprout, put it in a pot with soil. She returned to the gate and handed it over gently. He thanked her with a discreet nod, held the cutting slowly, and stood there for a moment, as if he were savoring not only the plant, but also the forgotten kindness of the world. "It's been a long time since anyone looked me in the eyes," he suddenly said, still holding the pot. Helena felt a lump in her throat, not out of pity, but for recognizing in that phrase something that also hurt her. Because she herself no longer knew when was the last time someone looked her in the eyes, without interest, without expecting anything in return. The man returned the pot and said, "Thank you, miss. I really needed this." Not just the plant, the pause, the gesture. And before she could ask his name, he was already walking away as he had arrived, in silence. But Helena couldn't go back to her armchair. She stood there, stopped at the door, watching the path where he disappeared, and feeling that something inside her had moved. That evening, the millionaire woman sat on the entrance step, still holding the soil in the pot. For the first time in many years, she cried. She didn't know exactly why. Maybe it was because of loneliness, the absence of bonds, or realizing that a simple man, thirsty for life and dignity, had said more with a plant sprout than all the science speeches she had ever heard in her life. That night, Helena couldn't sleep. The apartment that had always seemed so safe to her now seemed too big, too empty, too cold. The image of the man still haunted her thoughts like a persistent whisper. It wasn't just his gesture, it was what he represented. Something simple, direct, but loaded with a force she no longer knew how to name. Presence. Lying in her expensive sheets with the air conditioning spinning slowly, Helena found herself remembering her childhood. The time when her grandmother called her inside the house with a cup of mint tea, when she came back sweaty from the yard. She remembered the neighbor who offered fruit when someone cried. That good simplicity that made people look at each other with attention without hurry. But time passed and she built walls, first of glass, then emotional. Success demanded focus, coldness, objectivity. She learned to calculate profits, to cut ties, to smile at those who yielded contracts. And along the way, she forgot something fundamental, to be seen and to see others. The plant man had reopened a crack in this forgetfulness. In the days that followed, Helena became more attentive to the street. She observed from the window people who before were just shapes. An elderly lady who sold flowers with dragging steps. A young woman who passed by every day with her small child in her arms. A boy who swept the sidewalk of the corner store. She began to realize that the world was full of silences like hers, and that everyone carried stories that no one asked about. Curious, she began to walk on the sidewalk in the morning, something she hadn't done in years. The neighbors found it strange. Helena had always been the reclusive type who came and went by car, windows closed, distant gaze. But now she walked slowly, greeting with a shy wave. And strangely, this made her feel more human than any successful research. On one of these walks, she passed by the same corner where the man had stopped. She looked for him with her eyes, but didn't find him. She discreetly asked a man who sold newspapers if he knew a man in blue pants with an old bag. The vendor thought for a while and replied, "I think it's Mr. Manoel. He comes here sometimes, lives in Villa do Alvaredo, alone." Helena thanked him and returned home thoughtfully. Mr. Manoel. Now he had a name. And with the name came also a strange desire. She wanted to find him again, not out of charity nor guilt, but because she felt she needed to hear him more, to sit beside him, ask about his life, listen without hurry. For the first time, she wanted to connect without business, without interests, just completely. That night she sat on the balcony with a black-covered notebook. She wrote some loose lines there, something she hadn't done since she was young. She talked about the silence of the house, about the plant man, about how small she felt before the greatness of such a simple gesture. She ended the last sentence with a period and left the notebook on the table like someone planting a seed. The next day, with no scheduled appointments, Helena drove to Villa do Alvaredo, a simple neighborhood with dirt roads, colorful houses, clotheslines with clothes swaying in the wind. She parked the car and went asking door to door for Mr. Manoel. She received suspicious smiles, curious looks, but gradually approached her destination until a boy pointed to a yellow house with a wooden gate. "He lives there, miss." Helena took a deep breath and walked to the door. There was no doorbell. She knocked lightly and waited. With each second, her heart beat faster, because she didn't know exactly what to say, nor what she expected to find. She only knew she needed to be there, because the man who had asked for a cutting had also left thirst in her. The door took a while to open. Helena was already thinking of leaving when she heard slow steps on the other side. The handle turned slowly, and there he was, the cutting man. No surprise on his face, but with the same serenity as before, eyes fixed on her, as if he knew that one day she would return. "I knew you would come," he said, like someone just confirming something the heart had already told. Helena smiled, somewhat embarrassed. "I hope I'm not bothering you." He shook his head. "Bothering is something you do with empty words. You brought silence, and the right silence never bothers." She didn't know what to answer. Mr. Manoel opened the gate and pointed to the wooden chair on the porch. "Sit, miss. Today's heat calls for shade and conversation." The house was simple, but everything there had care. The plants in improvised pots, the embroidered cloth on the table, the smell of freshly brewed coffee coming from the kitchen. Helena looked around like someone visiting a sacred place. And, in a way, it was. It was the temple of silent dignity. A home that had no gold on the walls, but overflowed with truth. "I'm Helena," she finally said. He nodded. "I know. I saw your name in an old newspaper that covered the research of that project." She smiled, surprised. "You read about me?" "I did. I thought you were a woman too busy to notice other people's plants, but time changes us, or teaches us to look again." The conversation flowed like a stream over smooth stone. Helena told how she grew up in the suburbs, that she lost her father early, that she built everything with great effort, and that along the way, she lost other things without noticing. Manoel listened with his eyes, didn't interrupt, didn't judge. Sometimes he let out an "I know how it is" that said more than 1,000 pieces of advice. It was then that he told his own story. Born in the interior of Minas Gerais, son of a farmer and midwife, he came to the capital as a young man. He worked as a janitor, gardener, craftsman. He raised 2 grandsons alone. He lost one of them to a childhood disease, and the other distanced himself, ashamed of poverty. Today I live here with my memories, and sometimes with thirst for kindness. Helena held the glass he offered her. Clay filter water, fresh with the taste of childhood. She drank slowly, as he had done days before. She felt that this gesture closed a cycle and opened another, because for the first time in a long time, someone offered her something without expecting anything, just water and presence. "Why did you ask me that day?" she asked. Manoel smiled. "Because my body asked for water, but my soul asked for another kind of answer. And you, with all your pomp, were the only one who didn't deny me the basics." He sighed. It wasn't a test, but it was truth. Helena was moved. She looked at the ground, then at his hands, calloused, firm. "You gave me more than you asked for." And he, with simplicity, replied, "Sometimes those who thirst for something are the ones who offer the cup." They laughed together. It was a light laugh, like those who find a new way to exist in the world. When the sun began to set in the sky, Helena said goodbye with a long hug. On the way home, she felt something different in her chest, as if she had left a weight there on Mr. Manuel's porch, and taken with her something invisible but transformative. The certainty that life could still be sweet and that the cup sometimes needs to empty to fill up again. The following days seemed to have gained a new color. Helena returned to Mr. Manuel's house frequently, always with some pretext, bringing cheese bread, exchanging a plant cutting, knowing if the filter water was still fresh. But deep down she knew she needed those conversations to remember who she was before getting lost in the rush of success. At the office, her employees found the change strange. Helena began to greet everyone when she arrived, looked in their eyes, asked about children, parents, dreams. Even the coffee, which before was served by an invisible assistant, now she made a point of getting from the pantry, where she talked with people whose names she barely knew. And it was there that she discovered stories she never imagined hearing. "Dr. Helena, you're different," commented Julia, one of the secretaries. She smiled. "Maybe I'm remembering who I was." And she laughed with sincerity, something she had never seen. Gradually, that human climate began to spread throughout the company. The environment became lighter, ideas flowed better, people began to listen to each other, but there was a difficult decision hanging in the air. Helena had an old project: demolish part of a simple neighborhood to build another commercial center. It was a profitable plan, signed, approved. Only the beginning of construction was missing, but now she hesitated. That construction seemed too cold next to what she felt when she sat on Mr. Manuel's yellow porch. One day she called the engineering team and said, "We're going to suspend the project for now. I want to get to know the community better." Eyes widened. "Are you sure?" And she replied, "I am. For the first time, I am." And she personally went to meet the residents, sit with them, hear stories of those who had lived there for generations. She left there loaded with emotion and notebooks full of notes. Meanwhile, she continued her visits to Mr. Manuel. One afternoon, he showed her a faded photo album. "This one here is my grandson who passed away. This was the one who distanced himself, but I still dream of the day he returns." Helena looked at those images like someone seeing a portrait of her own absence, because deep down, she also missed something she never knew how to name. Manuel wasn't a counselor nor a psychologist. He was just a man who looked at life with courage and calm. Helena discovered that he made crafts to sell at the fair and helped neighbors with small words of encouragement. He never asked for anything, but he gave everything he could in the form of listening, faith, and hot coffee. One night, Helena returned to the mansion and looked around. Everything was there: the expensive paintings, the imported furniture, the stored wines. But she felt that none of this made sense if it couldn't be shared. That's when she had an idea. She picked up the phone and called her lawyer. "I want to create a social project, something real without facade. Can you help me?" The lawyer found it strange. "Projects like this don't usually bring financial return, Dr. Helena." But she replied without hesitation, "I don't want financial return. I want soul return." And so was born the first seed of what would become the Living Seed Foundation. an initiative aimed at offering support, welcome, and dignity to people invisible to the city. On paper, it was an NGO, but for Helena it was a bridge, a way to give back to the world what she had received in silence from a man who asked for nothing more than a plant cutting. The transformation was underway, and even though silent, it was already making noise in the hearts of all who crossed her path, because sometimes the greatest work of a life begins in the simplest house in the neighborhood. The news of the Living Seed Foundation soon spread. In the newspapers, Helena Vasconcelos came to be called the millionaire who changed course. But for her, it wasn't a change. It was a return, a reunion with something she had never really lost, just let fall asleep. Fame now came for reasons that made sense, and for the first time, she felt worthy of it. The first headquarters of the foundation was opened in Vila do Arvoredo itself. Mr. Manoel was invited to cut the symbolic ribbon, but refused. Those who cut ribbons are those who appear. I just want to continue serving coffee and asking if the person slept well. Helena respected this, and even so, left a special chair reserved for him in all meetings. In the following weeks, dozens of people passed through the project. People with similar stories, tired looks but resistant hearts. Helena listened to each one with patience. Sometimes she didn't give advice, she just listened. And she discovered that this was more powerful than any motivational lecture she had ever financed in the past. One day, while delivering plant cuttings in a small periphery village, she saw a young man in a cap sitting on the curb, staring fixedly at the street. He had features similar to Mr. Manoel's. Helena's heart beat faster. She crouched down slowly and asked his name. "Davi," the boy replied, suspicious. "Do you know a man named Manoel from Vila do Arvoredo?" The young man's eyes widened. "My grandfather," he murmured in a thread of voice. Helena sat beside him, calmly. She told everything about the cutting day, the porch conversations, the clay filter, the crafts, the longing. Davi cried in silence. He said he felt ashamed to return for having disappeared without explaining. Helena held him by the shoulder. "He never gave up on you. Never." And that same day, she returned with Davy to the yellow house. When Manoel opened the gate and saw his grandson before him, he said nothing. He just smiled and extended his arms. There was no resentment, just welcome. As if time knew this would still happen. The hug lasted minutes. Helena watched from afar with teary eyes. In that instant, she understood that life, when well lived, is a circle. The gesture you offer one day returns, maybe by another path, maybe in a form you don't expect, but it returns. And there, on that simple sidewalk, something had been completed. In the days that followed, Mr. Manoel began to make crafts in silence with his grandson in the yard. Davy began to help at the foundation. He said he wanted to learn about social projects, take care of logistics, contribute with something real. Helena welcomed him as if he were family. Thirst is quenched with water, but abandonment is cured with presence, she told everyone. The foundation grew. It gained new units. More people were welcomed. Helena began to give lectures in public schools, telling the story of the plant cutting. But she never revealed Manoel's name. This story is not about me or about him. It's about what we can be when we stop running only after what shines. And in the mansion, now renovated and open for community meetings, Helena kept a clay filter in the living room. Beside it, a framed note said, "To remember that the essential fits in a cup, and that the most valuable thing in life is not in what we accumulate, but in what we share."